Putazos y Pendejadas Podcast.
What's going on, Boxing Heads? It's PYP Boxing. Your boy David right here with Mark Salinas. Mark, how you doing, Mark?
Good, man. Good. A little bit tired, a little under the weather, but I'm all right, man.
I hear you, man. You were out in Houston, Texas at the Red Owl event.
Good fights, good conversation, great people, man. It was a good time.
We had some fights on the zone on Saturday. There were a couple of fights that stood out to me on the Conor Benn card. On the undercard, we had Austin Ammo Williams, who's now 16-0 with 11 KOs. He stopped Armel Mbumba Yasa, who is now 10-1 with 7 KOs. Stopped him in the 7th round. Mark, this is a 27-year-old southpaw, and I'm talking about Ammo Williams from Milwaukee, but he's fighting out of Houston, Texas. He is a guy who's pretty much set himself up for a big fight at 160 pounds. He's 3rd in the WBA, and that's the belt that Erislandy Lara holds. He's 5th in the WBC, and Carlos Adames is the interim champ there. We know that Jamal Charlo holds that WBC strap, but it doesn't look like he's returning to 160 pounds. So Adames is probably going to end up with that belt. Williams is also 6th in the IBF, which is one of the belts that Janibek holds. So this guy's in a good position right now. He's probably one or two fights away from a title shot. And I tell you something, he looked really good. I saw a good power jab from him. Nice, sharp left hand. He throws it right down the middle, and he knows how to play with angles. I think he moves a little too much. He kind of overdoes it with the foot movement and circling around, but he does like to use angles. What did you think about Ammo Williams, and do you think this guy has a future at 160 pounds?
I'll tell you what, man, I didn't know anything about him, and I'm glad that you told me to watch Conor Benn. You know how I feel about these UK guys, man. I'm not a big fan, but you're big on Benn. Cholo Trucker's big on Benn.
I'm not that big on Benn. Hold on. I like Benn. I'm not that big on him, though.
And Cholo's huge on this guy.
Yeah, Cholo likes him a lot.
Yeah, and so I decided to watch him. You told me to watch him, and I did. But I'm glad that I watched him because of Ammo Williams, man. Wow, I didn't know anything about him, but what a big puncher, man! And he knows how to play the crowd. After the knockout, the way he was waving to the crowd, and even during the fight, he knows how to play the crowd. He's a big puncher. He's fun to watch, and he just had a big splash on the zone. I don't really know much about him. I've only seen this one fight, but he did seem like he had a big punch there. He does have a good jab, like you said, and he doesn't have too much in his arsenal, but what he does very well.
No doubt about it. Knockouts bring you a lot of attention, Mark. And speaking of knockouts, Conor Benn did not get one in the main event. He fought Peter Dobson. He won by unanimous decision. Scores were 119-109, 118-110 on 2 judges' scorecards. Benn improves to 23-0 with 14 KOs. Dobson drops to 16-1 with 9 KOs. Mark, it was pretty clear from the start that Benn took over early. Actually, what it ended up looking like to me is Dobson gave up those rounds. We know that Conor Benn had not knocked anyone out after the 4th round. So Dobson was really playing the waiting game, getting Conor Benn into those later rounds. Like around round 5, you could see Dobson gave back some good action to Conor, was landing some good right hands as he started to pick up the pace. But I just think overall, Conor Benn's activity is what ended up winning it. People are saying ever since he was popped for the illegal substance in his blood, they're saying the power went away. I think that's misguided. I think the power was always an illusion, and not because of the substance that he may or may not have been taking during that time. He was really just knocking out people that had already been knocked out before. If you look at his knockout percentage, he's 60% KO, which is not bad. That's a good KO ratio, but it's come against people who, for the most part, have already been stopped. The last 2 people that he's fought, first of all, they weren't at 147 pounds. They were at 150 and up, and both opponents had never been knocked out before. So the Conor Benn destroyer name and him being a KO puncher, and I think that's a little overblown. He wasn't really considered a KO artist. I do think Conor Benn's fun to watch. I think he's a good action fighter. There are some things that I think he needs to work on. He needs to work on his counter game a little more and maybe not throw every punch with such force. Because if you saw that fight, Mark, he looked a little tired to me, a little winded towards the end of the fight.
Well, this is the second time I see him. The only thing I can say about Conor Benn is, man, how do I put it? He's a fighter that will clearly beat his opponent in a very unexciting way. He's just a good fighter, but he's not even fun to watch. He's
special.
He's not special. He's just beating these dudes, you know. He's not beating a guy. He's just beating a dude. And he's beating guys well, but not looking impressive doing it.
I can be on board with that. Again, I never bought into the power because when I look at his KO ratio, like I'm not seeing a significant KO ratio, right? Like we're talking about 60% here, a little over half, and he's 23-0 with 14 KOs. The people that he's been stopping, they weren't very impressive stoppages to me. And in terms of, it's been done before, right? It's like taking that girl to the prom that a bunch of people have already been to the prom with, you know, like it's just, like, it doesn't mean that much. Interesting thing happened after the fight, Mark. Conor Benn got visited by Bill Haney in the post-fight press conference. Did you catch that? And what do you think of a potential Conor Benn versus Devin Haney fight? Could that happen? And would it be a good fight if it did?
No, I mean, Haney's way too much for Conor Benn. I don't like that fight at all. Yeah, I mean, it'll be entertaining because I think Conor Benn sells tickets in Europe, but I don't think
it would have to take place in the UK, right?
Yeah, it would have to. But Haney will travel. He will. And you know what? Remember I said last time he deserves a kind of a take it easy fight. A gimme. And that would be the perfect one because he does have a pretty big name, but it has to be in Europe, man. And I think for Haney, he deserves a fight like that. I mean, after his last two amazing performances, I mean, come on. He needs a break.
Yeah, I could see Haney winning that fight as well.
Stay busy. Not a break. A stay busy. That's a stay busy fight.
Interesting. Oh, well, I think Conor might give him a little more than stay busy, but I see Haney clearly winning that fight. That would be a big fight, but Ben also has some other options in mind. He was angling for a Mario Barrios fight. Mario Barrios, I think, and Ben would that would be a pretty even fight to me. I think both guys are on the similar contender type level. They're on the fringe of contendership as well at 147 pounds. I like that fight. What do you think?
I like it too, man. But remember, Mario Barrios is coming all the way up from 120. Not all the way up. He's gradually come up from 126, right? He started his career there. Like, remember, he's a smaller guy. I don't know why Conor Benn is being mentioned with all these smaller guys.
He maybe was smaller. He's a full welterweight now. He can't make 140 pounds. Right. It's not that he decided to move up to 147. He couldn't make 140 anymore. He's a welterweight.
I would like to see Conor mentioned with guys at 147, 154. I don't want to hear Conor Benn mentioned with these little guys.
But I disagree that Barrios is a little guy. I got you that he started. I got you that he started at a lower weight, but I don't think Barrios is a little guy. He's a pretty big dude. So then I already take it that the little rift that Conor Benn had with Abdul Wahid, formerly known as Gervonta Tank Davis, they had a little spat on Twitter, and it looks like negotiations and offers are being sent, getting Eddie Hearn involved already. So I take it that fight wouldn't interest you at all.
I want to see him in his boots in his. I want to see him maybe at 154. I don't want to see him with guys that used to fight in lower weight classes. I want to see Conor Benn where he should be at 147, 154.
Okay. And you know what? Again, people are kind of making a big deal about that fight. I don't think it happens anyway. You got to remember, Tank had issues with fighting Ryan Garcia. He made Ryan come down to 136 and slapped the rehydration clause on him. We also had Tank hesitant to fight Devin Haney at 140 pounds. Devin already said he can't make 135, and he's also complained about Devin blowing up in weight. He also, after fighting Barrios at 140, he was asked if he wanted to campaign at 140 pounds. Tank said, no, those guys are too big for me. Add to the fact, the night of the fight, Conor Benn, who weighed in at 150 pounds the day before, weighed 170 pounds on fight night.
Yeah.
That right there, I have a lot of red flags on that. I don't think a potential fight with Tank would even be in the cards. I think they're just kind of blowing steam at each other. This Thursday, a Super Bowl pre-fight party is happening. Teofimo Lopez, who's 19-1, 13 KOs, is fighting Jamaine Ortiz, 17-1 with one draw and 8 KOs. They're going to be headlining an event on Thursday night before the weekend of the Super Bowl. If you remember, Mark, Oscar was trying to set up a fight with Teofimo Lopez and Ryan Garcia for this very fight. It didn't happen. Teofimo kind of balked at their offer, but I know some people think Ortiz is kind of a letdown. I think this is going to be a competitive fight. These guys have history, Mark.
Yeah. Ortiz is a really good fighter. I remember I caught his fight against
Jamel Herring.
Jamel Herring. He fought against Jamel Herring, and Jamel Herring is a really solid champ. And he took it to Jamel Herring. That was the first fight I saw of him. I've seen a lot of highlights, though. He's a really, really technically sound fighter. I always say when fighters have huge amateur resumes like him and Teofimo do, and they meet, it's always a fun fight. Man, you have been talking about it. These guys met before in the National Golden Gloves title fight. You know, it was a long time ago. Who's gonna? But what we do know is that it went to the cards, and it was, I believe, a split decision or something like that. I really do think we're going to see a competitive fight. This dude seems really, really serious about his craft. He's very serious about this fight. He's all business. There is real, I don't want to say hatred, but there's a lot going on in Ortiz's mind about that last loss. It has followed him through his career. He has it in the back of his mind. He's seen Teofimo become this big superstar. He didn't become that superstar. He may be having that in the back of his mind, thinking, what if I won that fight?
Yeah, I think you're right. There is a little bit of animosity almost. It's kind of like,
he keeps talking about it. He keeps saying it.
Yeah. There's definitely some feelings there in the past. I agree with you. Ortiz is a talented fighter. I remember the first time I saw him was against Lomachenko. I hadn't seen him before that. And I thought that fight could have gone either way. I was so torn between some of the rounds, which were very close. I could have given it to Ortiz. I thought he really gave Lomachenko a hell of a fight and was going to derail his match with Devin Haney. I'd say he showed a lot of good skills in there. Tough fighter. He's got everything: speed, a good punch. He can do everything in there, Mark. He's a switch hitter. He can fight southpaw. He can fight right-handed. And one thing about Jamaine Ortiz is that he's a big kid, and he kind of struggles to make 135 pounds. And you could see that because he would tend to get tired at the end of fights. Start off really strong, really fresh, and then towards the end, you could see him start to look a little sloppy. I think this move up to 140 pounds is going to be good for him. These guys know each other. There's history there. I think this is going to be a pretty good fight. I think kind of the issue here is more about where is Teofimo at in his head. If you know, he usually has a lot of drama leading into fights, man, either with his pops or some family issues. This time, all systems are go. It looks like Teofimo's in a good state of mind. I suspect that he should get past Ortiz. Some people are calling this a trap game, like a trap fight, where Teofimo might get caught. I don't think so. I think he's just a level above Ortiz. I've heard Teofimo Sr. talking about wanting the winner of Rolly Romero versus Isaac Cruz after this fight. Who knows? I think that would be kind of a letdown, to be honest with you. I think Teofimo should be in with the top fighters of the division. I don't think those guys are it. Mark, what is your prediction for this fight? How do you think it's going to end up?
I think Jamaine Ortiz is going to win. Jamaine Ortiz should be able to beat him. I really do think that he's going to beat him. Teofimo is a step above only in power. That's it. And I
speed, bro. Speed. I think Jermaine's a little bigger than him, though. Might have the reach on him, so that could cause some problems. but I think he has speed and power over Jamaine. So you're calling the upset special, huh?
Yeah, and I don't, I really think this kid is super, super focused with this fight. I know that Teofimo always is going to have that crazy power in his hooks, but this guy's got experience. He's been in there with Loma. He's been in there with Jamel Herring, and he made Jamel Herring look really, really bad. One of the toughest guys in that division. And he's been in there with him, and he's got all the confidence in the world. He really believes that he can beat this guy. He's not scared of him at all.
All right, moving on to the undercard, Mark. We've got a really good stacked card here. Keyshawn Davis is going to fight Jose Pedraza. This was a fight that was going to be talked about for January. Of course, Keyshawn had some issues with suspensions, so that wasn't going to take place. But Davis is taking a huge step up here. At 9-0, he's fighting a former champ, Jose Pedraza, who's 29-5. Davis had a pretty okay 2023. He had 3 fights, and then we saw that close decision win that he had against Nashawn Albright in Rosenberg, Texas. They turned that to a no contest. Looking at Pedraza, though, his last fight, he had a unanimous decision loss against Arnold Barbosa. His last fights, and he only fought once in 2023, like I said before. That, to me, is not a good sign. You don't want to come off that kind of a layoff fighting against a young stud like this. How do you see that fight going, Mark?
I like Keyshawn Davis's state of mind right now. He's talked about that last incident that you talked about in the press conference with the marijuana and him losing that fight and stop. He just wanted to drop a lot of bad habits he kept. Really talked a lot about his religion. I like where he is right now. He's born again. I like where he is. Mentally, he seems more mature. I remember I was at the last press conference when he did get busted for it, and he was really immature, started a fight there with his brothers in the back. I mean, a literal fist fight. Just joking around, talking, running around, being stupid, just being a wild kid. But you can tell he's really, really trying to make those changes and become a serious boxer and really, really practice his craft. So I like where his mindset is, and Bomac's going to be too much. With that mindset and Bomac in your corner, you're unstoppable especially with the talent that he's got.
Mark, we also have a good friend of the show, Rene Tellez Giron, will be fighting George Acosta. Giron is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, but those 3 wins he won by knockout. Acosta is on a 10-fight winning streak right now. He hasn't lost since 2019. That should be an interesting fight. Have you heard anything from Giron about this fight?
I did. I talked to Giron. Listen, he knows his opponent very well. Giron is really, really, really smart when it comes to boxing. I've never talked to a boxer that knows more about the game than him as far as knowing people and his opponents. He knows Jorge Acosta. He watches video on his opponents. He doesn't rely on his team to watch video and then let them implement stuff. No, he watches it, talks to his trainer, and tells him what he would like to implement. He has experience fighting taller fighters. Jorge Acosta is a taller fighter. He has knocked out taller opponents, and he sparred with a lot of taller opponents. Rene has a strong one-punch knockout power. You've seen it. He's prepared himself for Jorge Acosta. I think his knowledge of the game and his smarts in the ring is going to help him. I mean, what he lacks in athletic ability and technical skill, he makes up for in ring awareness. He's outstanding in ring awareness. So I think that'll take him to a victory there over Jorge Acosta. George Acosta. It's George Acosta.
Yeah. We also have Abdullah Mason, a guy that we think very highly of as far as prospects go. He's 11-0 with 9 KOs right now. He's fighting Benjamin Germent or Germent. I'm not sure how to say his name, but Mason was very busy in 2023. He went 5-0, had 5 straight fights. Germent's from Fort Worth, Texas, and his last 5, he's 4-0-1. He had 1 majority draw, and this guy actually has 3 majority draws on his record. That, to me, is a little suspect. It kind of tells you one thing. Either he was protected against some losses or he took some fights and he almost beat people he shouldn't have beat. Could be either way, any way you look at it. it's going to be good to see Abdullah Mason. I have high hopes for that kid. I think he's going to be something special.
Yeah, Abdullah Mason is real good. We interviewed him in December, and he was talking about, his Muslim faith. And what struck me with him when I talked to him is how mature he is. And he was talking about him and his 5 brothers. He compares. He says that his dad calls them the Jackson 5 of the boxing. Of the Jackson 5 of boxing. They do everything together. They train together. They're well-structured kids. They're deep in their belief. And I always think that that's good, man. Religion is always good because it gives really good structure to these guys. And Abdullah Mason is a really young kid who's really, really mature. You can go out there and see our interview with him. He's highly mature. He was talking about why he should have been prospect of the year, making a case for himself there. And just his maturity level at such a young age I think is going to take him really, really far, along with his skills. I think he should be able to walk through this Benjamin Gourmet. Abdullah Mason is a special guy. I doubt Benjamin is what Abdullah is.
No majority draws here, huh?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think he's going for his 10th KO here. Abdullah's the best of the brothers, and I think he's going to easily take this guy out and go on to maybe 4 or 5 fights this year, like he told us.
We also have Alan Kid Kansas Garcia, 10-0. We got a good look at this kid in Rosenberg. He looks like another strong fighter. Also lightweight, 135 pounds. He'll be fighting Tomas Ornelas, who's 7-3.
Alan Kid Kansas Garcia, David, he's a freaking animal when it comes to working out, David. Some people talk about overtraining and things like that, but Alan Kid Kansas, as we both know, he trains with
Coach G.
Miss G. And he was talking about her today in the press conference and, giving her praises and things like that. But he says she works him out to death. He says sometimes he has to leave his bag next to the door because if she doesn't feel he's doing right that day or just busting his ass, she'll make him leave. Along with that, every time he goes back to Kansas, he doesn't go back and chill. He's in the gym every single day. Alan is a kid that trains, whether he's in camp or not in camp, he trains the same. He's always looking at his body, making sure everything that goes into his body is right. And I highly doubt his opponent puts in the work that he does.
He's a very, very disciplined kid. Coach G runs a tight ship. So we know that he's going to be prepared and show up and be ready for fight night. That'll do it for today. Make sure you tune in Thursday night for ESPN. A lot of good fights on that card. Tune in early. Don't just tune in for the main event. You're going to get a chance to see a lot of the promising prospects in boxing. And Mark, we'll see you on the next one.
All right, man.
Putazos y Pendejadas Podcast.